All right, so like I had said at the beginning, ergonomics and body mechanics or biomechanics they support each other, but they're not the same thing. So ergonomics is about your equipment, your space, your room, timing, how they call it a duty schedule, how long you work, what sort of break structure you have in place. Shoes are part of it, and a lot of people find that they compromise how they use their body, which is the body mechanics piece, because the room is too small or it's an odd shape, or they have a habit of standing on their toes because the table is too short or it's too tall, or they are in an odd shaped room. That will do it. Some of the franchises in the very beginning, back in the early 90s, the rooms were too small, and so people were trying to navigate around a room. You really need a room that at the very smallest is like 9 by 9. That's and then the table is on an angle in there. A 10 by 10 is doable. 12 by 10 gives you a little bit more room at the ends of the table. A 12 by 12, you can use a screen and set up a little office corner if that's, you're all in one room. How big is your room, Wanda?
I'm just trying to think when you said that. I'm really not quite sure. My table is at, but not
Yeah. What are they like at Libby or at Hand and Stone?
They're probably 10 by 12.
That's,
I always use the couples room, so I got 20 by 20.
You got bigger space.
Yeah.
Yeah. The common, because the mall, they would go in usually to a strip mall type situation, and those are 20 feet wide by 60 feet long. Those are the typical slots, and so then they'd have to have a 3-foot hallway in there, and then they would try to get rooms on either side. So a lot of times you would end up with something that was 9.5 by 10. Of course, they wanted to optimize the space. When you are looking at your space, you do want to make sure that your room is big enough to support your body mechanics. The smallest room we've got is 8.5 by 9.5, and the table is on an angle, and it gets a little tight moving around one corner. It's pretty good on one side, but on the other side I have to sidestep to get around. But once I reposition myself there, then it's okay. So that is something you want to take a look at. Also, not having a slippery floor, which you go back and forth. How do you keep something clean and sanitized, right? But have a fabric floor, like carpeting, which is non-slip. So, and then if you use something like a throw rug, to try to keep people's feet, especially if you use oil, which we don't teach you to use, but a lot of places do use oil, that people's feet are slippery. And so you'll put a rug down, but then the rug slips. Mm-hmm. And so, you have to be cautious about that. You need to have a shoe that has a non-slip bottom to it. A tennis type shoe. I have switched over to the zero lift shoe that sometimes they'll call it a barefoot shoe, and it is primarily for my own balance. I'm still getting used to not having some of that cushioning, for standing for long periods of time, but I'm not doing that much massage anymore. I see you've got those
I do
on.
barefoot, but I actually am barefoot when I do massage.
Yeah,
I
but
do-
you gotta be careful you don't slip.
I do shoeless and I have carpet.
Yeah, what you really have to be careful of is working in socks. Socks you will slip in the socks, and you don't wanna do that. So, now you're in your own world,
Yes.
and you can make your own rules about how you're.
It's one of the reasons I have to work in my own world.
Yeah, it's because you have your own things, right?
Exactly.
But in most situations, they're gonna require you to have shoes and socks on. And so the foot can't slip. If the foot slips, it's like having a rolling chair. You push it, if I'm gonna push forward this way, then for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction on stuff. So you gotta be able to plant that back foot down and not slip back with it. So, can you think of any other ergonomic factors, Ed, that I'm missing? Temperature of the room, airflow of the room.
Yeah, you need that. Perfect.
Equipment.
Yeah.
Like Londa was talking
Oh.
about, Theraguns, scrapers, suction cups, that sort of thing. When you hear me teaching about it, I'm gonna say things like, using that implement needs to make your life easier, and it needs to accomplish something that you would have to work hard to accomplish. So grasping and lifting tissue is hard. A suction device, a suction cup or whatever can do that, and you don't have to overextend the grip, kind of a thing. Go ahead, Ed.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's, you gotta make, like you were saying, make sure that the device that you're using doesn't cause more stress than, because I know back at GM, say have a problem, they designed some articulating arms, so the guy had to wrestle that worse than it was to just pick up the part and put it on
And
the,
do it, yeah.
So,
Now, body mechanics would be things like lifting, and we do some of that when we do joint movement. Even the bolstering, now you can save yourself a lot of work and keep yourself out of awkward postures, non-neutral postures, by bolstering people.
Mhm.
So they are, the contours of their body are more aligned on how you're gonna be able to get to them easier.
it's
And
better
then-
going up a hill than it is going
Yeah,
downhill.
so
you can bolster
on an
so that you're
incline-
going on it. So then
I think I got a good picture of
Okay.
that. I think you drew it,
Might
actually.
have.
We'll see. And, so there are things that I could explain this stuff to a carpenter, or an engineer or something like that, and that makes perfect sense to them. But others, they maybe have a hard time with their own spatial awareness. Now, you were sighted. How old were you when you finally lost most of your vision, Renee?
About 24.
Yeah, so you were sighted. You knew what up and down was, and spaces on either side of you, and had an idea of where you were in space and stuff. People who have never been sighted, as far as my experience in teaching them to use their body in a certain way, is much more difficult. But if you've been sighted, then it's not so bad. You've seen what a room looks like and all of that. So as a study, essentially was, if you use effective body mechanics, you can do one more massage a day
one
without
or
hurting
two.
yourself, which
Yeah.
means you're gonna make a whole lot more money.
Right. Yeah. Back in when we did that conference, it was 2008 or 10. It was like, you make about 9,000 a month, or 9,000 a year more if you could just do one more massage, and you make 18,000 a year if you could do 2 more massages.
Right.
You know, so if you just, the more you can add to your,
Without hurting yourself,
Without
and
hurting
still
yourself.
delivering an efficient and effective session.
and that was back, like I said, that many years ago, so it's a lot more now.
So there has been very little actual research done on massage and ergonomics, how we should be doing massage, which is a travesty because it can absolutely be studied by experts in the field. It's not even a study. They just have to watch and look and see how you're using the body. Almost every occupation has had an ergonomics and biomechanics analysis to it. When I first was writing the book and trying to sort this out, the best examples I had was mining and butchers because of the pressing down and the pushing forward and with the carts and that sort of thing. These 2 links will take you, and those are in your handout. They will take you to the one ergonomics project that the Massage Therapy Foundation has done, and this will give you more detail on that. Ed and I were on phase 1 of the committee. They're supposed to be working on phase 2. The information I'm going to show you is from phase 1. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Things don't necessarily go quickly. But the phase 2 is where they're supposed to put sensors on people and then get information about how they're using their body and how much energy they're exerting and that sort of thing. So these links would take you to more information. What I want to use here is this little diagram, and Ed, I think you did draw that one that's down here in the
Might have,
corner.
yeah, or something similar to that.
Yeah, so if we look at these, these are the results that came out of that first phase 1 ergonomics study that Ed and I were involved with. We weren't the only ones. They finally took our information, a recommendation. They actually hired an ergonomics firm that went in and looked at this. And so the first one is to improve your own physical conditioning. And I think that would show up in anybody's ergonomic study, is that you have to take care of yourself physically. So, Londa, you have done that related to the hypermobility. You've had an exercise routine for your stability. Taking care of your hands is a biggie. And what you'll hear Luke and I say is avoid the use of your fingers, especially the use of your thumb. If you're going to use your fingers, you need to use them as a unit and avoid using your thumb. It's a saddle joint, you can't stabilize it. The fingers are hinge joints, you can stabilize them. And when they say counter pressure, they're talking about if you're going to use your fingers to apply pressure into a narrow area, cover it with your other hand so it's like a double hand that's doing that. Can you visualize that, Renee, on what I'm doing?
One hand on top of the other, just stacked right on top. There you go.
That, just like that.
Double like that. Okay.
Yeah. So,
I have a question regarding that. So rock climbing, it's called crimping. So you push your thumb into your fingers to create more of a structure.
yes.
Is that something that could be
That
used?
is one of the things that they will talk about, and then use that as a whole unit,
Yeah.
almost like a fist, but an open fist
Mhm.
kind of a thing. And Luke, I think when you teach them to use a fist, you've got the thumb,
Thumb out.
you know,
Yeah. But that's an interesting point. The idea of
the
bracing
thumb
the thumb against the index finger.
when you
to
make a
then- It's
fist.
the same principle of why I tell you to predominantly be using your ring finger and middle finger, the third and fourth digits, because you can bracket them using the index and the pinky.
Right.
But there's no reason why that idea of incorporating the thumb as a little bit of an additional force on the whole side of that.
Yeah, with the fist,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, he says that's for,
or the
That's-
whole hand,
that's,
okay.
that's for a pull action he's talking about, being able to hold on the edge of something.
I can see
So
that.
That's using for fingertip pointed work, or a pull.
Yeah,
I know what you're
I
talking
see
Yeah.
that,
about.
I just was curious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, the physics of that totally apply.
Mhm.
like this.
What you don't wanna do is have it out here doing.
Yes, you don't want to be single out your distance.
Single out your digit,
Yeah.
yeah, you get, if you keep it together, you're right, yeah, but you don't want it out here doing, cause a lot of people do.
Right.
And then you're pulling that joint, which
Right.
isn't designed to.
And I think
Yeah.
you're right.
Exactly.
Well, no, the proof in that is certain, because the ability to hold on those narrow anchor sites.
Yeah, exactly. If you're
Yeah.
hanging on just your fingers, your joints are gonna give out and slip.
Right.
Yeah.
If you just add that little bit of stability, they become a unit.
Well done, Jaden. This is the kind of thing that I like. We can always improve, and you'd be surprised how much you can take from other activities.
Yeah, and genuinely, that is a bit of an aha, because I haven't done that as much, but I watched Free Solo.
Yeah.
Some appreciation.
Good. Well done. Well done. Okay. I don't necessarily agree totally with what they've got here on table height. It says for light pressure strokes, use a higher table. For moderate to firm strokes, lower your table. Ed, you want 2 cents on that? I mean,
Yeah,
we didn't agree with that.
no, we didn't. I did a study, well, back when I was working for GM, we had a software program where you could mock up a person's workstation and they could determine the stress at the various joints. And I was able to get a copy of that after I retired, and we used that to do a study on table height. And basically, the higher the table, the less stress on most of the joints.
Now,
Even
not
going
at
in-
your armpits.
No, not at your armpits, but
Right in this
right
area.
in the hip area. But
Yeah.
so many people have it, they're working like down here. you know.
Yeah.
And then not only, one of the things is, if you're working like this, then when you take your pressure off, now your whole body is being right here on your lower back, has to support that weight. Whereas if you're more stable this way and you've got this leg here, I come off, I'm a lot more stable because I've got that stability, which is the method for the
Yeah.
asymmetric
Press
stance.
forward with legs together versus a staggered
Yeah.
stance.
So
Yeah, I was just gonna put some language on that. The first one, he had a really low table between his thigh and, right about mid-thigh. And his feet were pretty close together and they were one right beside the other, and then he was just bending forward to apply the pressure. And you'd be surprised how much of that you see.
Yeah.
And so when you go to stand up with that, your back is
Yes, to
what's
support
taking
your
you
whole
upright.
upper body, yeah.
In addition, we're gonna talk to you about a long stroke will do that.
Yeah.
If you're like standing, and we see this a lot, you stand at the head of the table and then you wanna apply some sort of a stroke, whether it's with your hands or your arms or whatever, and you wanna go all the way down the back and then you wanna come back up. God, don't do that. And that did show up in the study about not doing that, because you end up with your arms functionally are over your head and your back's got to pull yourself up, and so you want to stay by the side of the table. They said don't work at the ends of the table. Now you can if you're working on the neck and the feet.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna start to slide down the whole back, and so many people do that. You got something?
Feels
Luke?
so good.
I was just gonna say, that's probably one of my favorite go-to moves.
Yeah.
I don't do it, but I love it when it's done.
Thank you. That's right.
And then I will say to, one of the things I was constantly saying is it doesn't matter if the client loves it if it's hurting you.
Sure.
So if they had never had it, they wouldn't know that they liked it. So, So you want the about hip height, right where your greater trochanter there, or at the iliac crest, right there in that range right there, you want your table. You want to stand up. You want to be standing up, your spine is straight, and the amount of movement you have forward and back as you start to lean your whole body forward. But it happens because you're pushing with your back leg and your front knee is bending. So it's that kind of a back and forth movement. Use position to your advantage. Use the stride stance, that's 1 foot in front of the other, but not too close together. Sometimes I see people, it looks like they're almost walking a tightrope. At the side of the table, trunk aligned with the stroke direction. That means your belly, if you're going up the side of the back, then your belly button shouldn't be pointed at their glutes. All right? Your belly button goes with your stroke. And then this is the one that I think was maybe the most important thing that came out of it, was trunk flexion no more than 20 degrees.
And I'm realizing once you have that staggered stance,
You don't have to do much of that leaning forward.
I end up feeling like if I
Yeah.
am set in the stance and I look down, my nose should not be over my toes.
Right, you shouldn't be.
See?
That's a good way
That's a
to
good
think about it
reference.
too.
Because either I am either going to do this, or I'm going to start going so forward that the weight is too much on that front foot.
So here, there
Right?
you go.
That's a good reference point, the nose and the toe.
Yeah. If you look straight down,
Back straight. Just do what you
Shouldn't
were
be
doing. You were
there may
doing
be
it
some
right.
times if I'm
Right.
honest, where
Yeah, cause I could lean.
once I'm actually applying pressure.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, now your
that's
lean is a little bit too.
the general
long.
guidelines,
Yeah,
that it's real easy. And as she said, the most common offender is just with that really
Yeah,
long table.
now lean,
And it's going to become,
just
you
with your
know,
leg.
you guys don't have to worry about it. It becomes more of an issue
That.
when it's the heavy pressure
Okay,
people.
I see.
That's it.
That sometimes you will defer to that. So that's where the adjustable ones of the whole step thing is essential. So it keeps you from doing that. Because over time, the one thing you don't want to do yourself is a chronic low back problem. Or a chronic anything problem if you can.
So, even though I did not agree, and Ed didn't agree with me, on this table height recommendation, if you follow this no more than 20 degrees of flexion,
Then you have to bring your table up.
you have to bring your table up. And if you're gonna primarily use your hands, the table will be lower. But if you're gonna primarily use your forearm, the table is gonna need to be higher. Is that making sense to everybody? And I think that's the piece that got missed here. If, even with the recommendation we give you, if your table is at your greater trochanter area, that hip, if it is there and you're using your forearm, you're gonna bend forward, or you're gonna really widen your stance, which is what I just corrected you on. And as soon as you widen that stance and you got a lot of space between your legs and you start to lean, you're gonna come off your back foot and up onto your toe. So we see that a lot, people going into these, that's good right there, Wanda. We see people going into these big lunges and all of that, you know, and it looks like they're really working, you know, and they're all, but if your weight is on the ball of your foot in the back, your stance is too big. And you're bent over, and you start to lose, you know, when you think about leaning a ladder against a wall, if you have it too far away from the wall, it's gonna slide down. The ladder is not gonna be stable. So that's basically what we're doing, as we start out with our center of gravity going right down between our feet. Then as we move, we push with our back foot, our weight goes into our back foot, our front knee starts to bend forward. That's the excursion. And if you get over that, if you get over what Luke just said, over your toe on that and you're leaning, then you start to lose your balance. So,
One thing I've tried to reinforce is that while doing this, that back heel, because it is a common, you hear Tanya talk about coming up onto the tippy toe a little bit, where you'll be applying pressure, but then inadvertently, as you do bend at that front knee, you keep going, then you'll end up on your toes of the back leg. To keep that heel down, a reference is just to make sure you feel like you can still wiggle your toes. I feel like I can still pick my toes up, keep my heel planted. That's a quick little just somatic reminder that I got my heel down.
that's good, Renee, good, Renee. Lonnie, you had the right stance, but you're so little. I'm having a hard time because you're so little. You look terrific though, and I'm sure you feel a lot better. I gotta change my perception.
And also too, when you're like this, the center of gravity of your body is just about kind of right there in the chest area. So if I'm like this, I'm still, my
Between
center
your
of
feet.
gravity is between my feet. If I'm standing like this, as soon as I start to go, now my center of gravity is out over past my toes. So
And then you're gonna tip
you're
forward.
gonna tip, or you're gonna have to try and pull back with your back muscles in order to keep you from falling forward.
And
Well, or you
this
lean
is-
on the
yeah.
client, and then you're stuck.
Yeah.
What Ed just referenced is where probably the predominant confusion of biomechanics occurs, is because like the horse stance idea,
Yeah.
they're coming a lot of times from a more, call it Tai Chi, but a martial arts based principle, that you stand in such a way where you maintain your center of gravity directly between your legs down through your pelvis, right? That way, like, you can strike and return, or you can take a blow and be grounded and immovable. But that doesn't apply with force delivery, right? That idea of like, you gotta have that same stability where you're holding yourself up, but then still able to, that's the staggered stance argument versus the two together, because then that's lost.
It's like if you just hold a string right here, and as soon as you go
Yep.
like that, the string's coming
There you go.
out
That was
past
the
your
other-
feet.
We
Whereas if
used
I
to
go
do
like
that, right?
this, now
Yeah.
the string is still between my feet.
And you brought one foot forward, Renee.
Yeah.
And if you are in the symmetrical stance and you do lean forward to apply pressure, you're stuck.
Yeah.
You gotta push yourself back with your hands. If you've got the staggered
Or pull
stance,
yourself with your
or
back
pull yourself
muscles,
back.
which is gonna cause problems.
If you've got the staggered stance, so I push myself forward with my back foot, but when I wanna come up, I can use my front foot
Yeah.
to push me
Push
back.
back. Yeah.
Alright, so I'm not using my back to do that. And they still teach that horse stance thing.
Because they're coming from it from that energy-based Tai Chi principle.
Yeah.
I can get in their mindset, but they're wrong.
And so both feet, about shoulder width apart, symmetrical. Then they get their hands in front of them and then they rock back and forth on their feet. That's what they think they're doing. So, and how they're delivering their pressure. So, down, see how far apart, here's close together, see how far apart my feet are? Bend the knee,
Yeah.
and then they shift their weight this way.
Oh.
They're like using their hips.
Yeah, and it's a lot of,
Destabilizing.
it's a lot of the, because it literally turns into like, the tendency is to stand in one place and see how much area can be covered. So I'm standing knees bent and then just like really drawing my arms in like a wave back and forth, side to side, and literally this will be the application. You
Or
know?
they'll try to do that in need. That's.
Yeah,
Right.
that kind of just bounces. Now the thing is that gets
Yeah.
taught in these other
Yeah.
movement related principles in Tai Chi and Qigong. This idea of knees unlocked, slightly bent, flattening the lumbar curve, tightening the core, and living here with breathing. Like, yeah, for standing upright, that's nice because you take the pressure off like the knees and you're relying you flatten out your low back, lessen the disc space there, that's all good stuff. But again, once we're doing force delivery, got it. But you'll see it, you can understand it, know that it's silly.
Now, are you seeing any more correlations to like the rock climbing with this?
I mean-
Because so far you've given us two things that are really good.
Well, I mean, the whole I thought of a tripod. Kind
Uh-huh.
of like, yeah, just more stability. I don't know. Athletic stance.
Yeah.
Ideally 3 points of contact so you can get your arm a rest.
Right. Yeah.
I've never climbed a rock.
No,
No.
it's fun.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
I did more ice
We'll
climbing.
That was one thing, so.
And that was a challenge, the ice climbing alone.
I've never done that.
Yeah, I think you would do just fine.
Okay.
The mechanics of it are hard.
I bet.
You characters can sit down if you want to. Let's see. The other thing that we've got here is avoid trunk and neck lateral flexion and rotation. So that is where, no matter where your feet are at, it's like if you slide down your hand down your hip, that is laterally flexing, and you'll see that. And the other thing you'll see is instead of people moving their feet to change direction, they keep their feet and they twist at their pelvis and low back to change direction. Now, as soon as you're doing that, your belly button is not facing where you're going. And boy, I'll tell you what, that will get your lower lumbar and your knees big time if you do that regularly. Can you think of anything else on that, Luke?
But it's just the idea that, your ankles are essentially a modified hinge joint. So they're adapted to wherever your toes are pointed, that's the direction the body weight is going. So the challenge a little bit there is there's sometimes a tendency to want to externally rotate a little bit on the back leg. And that makes sense. People will have to adapt. There's going to be something. It can be a knee, it can be a hip, it can be a low back thing. A little
You
bit
don't
of
want to
that.
look like a duck.
Yeah. To be here, and then goes into the principle I was talking about. This is another stance, which feels potentially comfortable, but that means that this leg is no longer transferring your weight in the direction you're actually trying to deliver pressure. So
And
as much as those are lined up as possible, that also aligns your knees.
Yes.
So then two hinge joints basically causing you to either fall forward or backward. In this case, we're falling forward. And it's free energy delivery. Once those are lined up, as she said, the belly button's the next thing to pay attention to, because where the belly button is where the pelvis is, meaning that's what's going to align your spine in the right direction. So if I can get my toes and knees comfortably, that's the one. The back leg may need some adjustment, but as comfortably as possible, both toes lined up where you're trying to apply pressure. Get the belly button there, and this is something that really gets people this kind of tilt. This will initially feel comfortable, and both things have to happen, because if they just do the leg, this feels weird. And this will initially maybe feel a little bit odd in the low back. Belly button, sternum, but then also your nose. I can speak to one of my odd habits I had to discover was when applying a lot of pressure, I'd be holding, and I apparently was just tilting a little bit, and I was getting some odd stuff in my neck of all places. And it was me realizing that in the midst of doing that, I was having a tendency to kind of just turn my head and recruit from my dominant right side. And I just had a moment of realizing, wait, I'm actually looking, my nose is pointed, I don't know, the head's what, 8 to 12 pounds? That's a little extra force maybe going in the right direction. But that idea of trying to line up all the structures so that everything ideally is falling like a set of proper dominoes as effectively as possible, then that's free energy. Yep. And the challenge seems to be a lot for people figuring out how do they find that middle ground of maybe having to turn out that back leg and get their pelvis twisted so that their belly button as well as their toes are directed in the right direction. But that seems to be where the crooked elements happen the most. Turning the leg out and having their pelvis twisted. Usually trying to modify for a knee, hip, or low back issue.
The other thing is stay there.
But it will cause a knee issue. That's
Exactly.
Because the knee doesn't want to twist.
I'll stay nice and line, but I keep wanting to throw this leg out.
Yeah.
Then I can
And it
feel
gets you on the
Yeah,
inside of the
yeah,
knee.
Yep.
inside the knee. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Because
gotta
at
make
some
sure-
point that's gonna.
That's my one thing. I gotta keep pulling that thing
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, that poor hinge joint, you know, it's supposed to go this way and that, but if you are leveraging it like this, then the stress is gonna
Back and forth
usually
instead of
get pushed
Side
to
to
the
side
medial
instead
side.
of back and forth.
Mhm.
So get the right stance.
Yeah.
All right.
I have to make sure I'm narrower, cause I'll default to a slightly wider.
So he is pretty much lined up this way, working with hinge joints, and hinge joints will stabilize. They almost all of them have a locking mechanism. So when he comes forward and back, that's following the flexion and extension that our bodies are set up to do when we move. Okay, if he turns his back foot out, now when he starts to come forward, he's putting an internal strain. There's a cave happening here. This knee on the outside is going in and is putting a stretch on the inside of it. That's where the knee pain comes from. So, and I tell people all the time, well, I'm a dancer. I had to do this. I have to do that. That's uncomfortable.
And those are the stances, like you don't see in dance a tendency to want to be like this, right? There's a lot of focus on strength and the external rotation. The hip joint is also very predisposed to getting stronger and stuck in an externally rotated state. It sets the ball more flush in the socket. The ligament structures are set to spiral and bring you into flexion and external rotation. So you're going to see this. They've seen it with their clients. You're going to see a lot with people, for example, that assessment and prone. They'll have usually much more an external hip rotation and less an internal rotation. So from a mobility standpoint for longevity, usually we have to be sure, and it's a thing for clients that you'll find too, people tend to need to maintain, if not gain, more internal hip rotation capability so they can even pull this off, as well as ankle flexibility, the Achilles tendon. Because if you can't dorsiflex enough to get this stance and keep your heel down, that can be a factor. So sometimes there's a little bit of making sure your calves and hamstrings are freed up enough so you can get an appropriate stance, but as well as like challenging yourself to do something where you're making sure your hips are going into internal rotation. Otherwise, they'll always feel uncomfortable and stiff.
The other thing is there is a form difference in the joints. Male joints in general fit firmer.
But
Female
the pelvis is also narrower.
Yeah.
So
Female joints fit a little looser, the pelvis is wider, so the femur comes down at a V. That's valgus, I think.
Yeah.
I could get valgus and varus mixed up.
varus is bow-legged, valgus is not.
Okay, not kneed.
Yeah. They call it a Q angle.
Yeah.
For some reason.
It actually is, it's called a Q angle.
Why?
Yeah.
Who?
That sets the knee up in females for injury, just in general. And so it's important go ahead and take a normal stance. Somebody just came in. Okay, his feet are his feet are further apart than how I'm gonna put mine. My feet, when I go to put my feet 1 foot in front of the other, I want my heel to line up, the heel to be in the same plane, the same line as the toe of the back leg. I don't want much more than that. So, those are things.
Yes, yes.
I'm Michelle from Blue Sky, Therapy in Davison.
I don't know. soy something. All right, so the other things that we have based on this study was the overstretching, or overreaching, that we had talked about. Standing closer to the table. And so, and it's even once in a while, it's okay to lean your front hip on the table. So then we've got, and then all kinds of too much of a reach around the body. You know, so like you're standing on one side of the person and you're reaching way, way over and trying to get to the other side of them. We actually teach you to do that, but only for a pull. All right, to do that, to pull. So you're reversing, you're coming forward across the person's body, and then your weight is shifted to your front foot, and then you keep a hold, and then you push back with your leg. And then that's how you get that pull happening. Do you have any other comments on this, Ed?
No, not really.
Does that pretty much take care of that right in there? All right, so this is a good place for us to take a break.